The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by two excellent co-hosts,
Nate Heininger
and Shane Kelly.
And this week we are talking about Lil Gator Game.
Yep, Lil Gator Game.
Lil Gator Game.
That is Lil Gator Game spelled L-I-L Gator Game, not L-I-T-T-L-E Gator Game. So make sure you're searching for the right thing on Steam. Lil Gator Game.
Feels like this was a title for the game that they were just like a working title, and then as the game got developed and got cuter and cuter and cuter, they were just like, we can't improve upon the name Lil Gator Game, and they just stuck with it.
Yeah, it's the Untitled Goose Game.
Yeah,
syndrome. I think it's a good name for the game. It's also it also helps that you pick your gator's name, and so like having a little bit of an anonymous nature to it. It feels about right. This is an open world sort of extremely Zelda-inspired game, but much less Zelda-y than I was expecting. So we don't actually play a lot of open world games on this show because there's so few of them that are short. But this one this is about a 4-hour game, or maybe even less, depending on how quickly you find all of the things. And it's just an incredibly cozy, friendly vibe. It's a game about a little gator. You're definitely a child. I'm not really sure what age you're supposed to be here, but really young. You've got an older sister who just started college, so at the very least, you're younger than that. And you and her,
you're littler than that.
Oh yeah,
Lil.
You're a little guy.
If there's one thing we can be certain of, you're a Lil Gator.
You're a little gator.
Yeah.
And you are exploring an island where you and your older sister used to play elaborate Zelda-inspired pretend play games where she would sort of, go around this whole island with you, setting up challenges for you to complete as the hero. And back in the day, that's what you loved to do with your older sister. But then she went away to college and she's back to visit, but she can't play with you. She is busy working on a project. She's sitting there with her laptop. And while she's being very kind, she's also continues to tell you that no, I can't play because I've got important big kid stuff to do. And you, in your little kid wisdom, decide that the best way to solve this problem is to build the most elaborate play pretend, Zelda world for her to come explore that you possibly can. Get as many kids in on the game playing as essentially NPCs in the weird little play pretend world that you're setting up. Just recruit all the friends, build all the cute structures, battle fake enemies made out of cardboard, and hopefully by doing all of this stuff, you'll inspire her to come and play with you.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, while the actual quests and little action elements that you're doing, it didn't feel like it at all. Ultimately, this game kind of felt like Breath of the Wild, but for babies for me. And it was a great little appetizer for made me particularly excited for Tears of the Kingdom that's about to come up. But I don't want to short sell this game by any means. But it just the traversal mechanic is straight up Breath of the Wild, and I really enjoy that. So it was fun.
Yeah, that is probably the main sort of Breath of the Wild thing in this, is that it is this open world. It's this fully 3D open world, and you can climb, and you have the stamina meter, just like the Breath of the Wild games.
This is one of my favorite things about the game, is instead of the stamina meter in Breath of the Wild, which is just abstract green pies or circles that you kind of use up. In this, they are colorful bracelets that you get from a cool monkey.
Yeah.
I love that.
that you don't know why, but for whatever reason, they just allow you to climb further.
They're great bracelets. I remember when I used to work in the Galleria, the mall here in Houston, and they had these stalls that were selling bracelets that had.
I was just going to mention
kind
those.
of what were those? They had some
like
kind of
magnet
faux
force
magnetic
or something like that.
microchip thing embedded in them that was kind of pure pseudoscience, and that the people at the booth would like put them on your wrist and say like, here, try it on. When you have it on, you'll have incredible balance, and then when you take it off, they like shove you or something. It's just exactly like that. It's those magic bracelets from the mall. And everything in this game, it has that handmade or homemade quality, especially what you mentioned, Raygan, is those enemies made out of cardboard, which is just delightful. There's just all these crazy cardboard cutout bad guys all over the island for your shredding pleasure.
So I think the thing that really sticks out about this is is that it is it's a Zelda-like in a way, but in every possible way they've taken it down to its like little kid version of things. So there's a town, but it's really just a playground, and you're recruiting people to come and like decorate it to be a pretend play town. In fact, the main sort of goal of the game is exploring this island and finding all of the people on it. You're all animals, so you're playing, of course, as a little gator, but you've got friends who are like deer and foxes and a shark and everything. And every time you find a person or an animal person, all of them have some little thing they want you to do, and some of them are really simple, like, hey, could you go and bring me an ice cream or something? You go and get the ice cream, you bring it back, done. And then they give you a reward, usually some confetti, which is the sort of currency in this.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Crafting
and then
supplies.
They go back to your home base, the little like town that you guys are building. Some of them are more complicated. It's got this kind of like hub and spoke, like big landmark system. From anywhere in the island, you can see about 3 or 4 tall things. So there's a radio tower, there's a windmill, like a power generating windmill. There's a very tall tree, and then there's like a rocky peak. And those 4 places, each of them has a bunch of stuff going on at each of those. So that does sort of help you navigate. There's no map in this game, but you do sort of learn your way around by navigating by these tall landmarks. And when you get to each of those tall landmarks, there's a crew of people hanging out there, which are kind of the larger quests of the game. And those still basically come down to each person has some little like hobby thing that they want you to help them with, or important thing that they want you to go and get for them. Little basic, very basic quests. But each of these places will have like a bunch of kids hanging out there, and it eventually sort of sums up to a plot. Like you've got all of your friends went in different directions on the island. You're going and finding them, meeting their friends, recruiting them all to come back to your home base and hang out and play pretend hero with you. It's really, really charming.
I think the gameplay is fun, but I think and like overall I think this game is great, but I think the thing that stands out to me, one of the things that stands out to me a lot is the writing of all of the kids. Just this like going around and trying to piecemeal together this plan to get your sister to play with you is really adorable and really funny. How much the kids like either do or do not care about what your plot is. They're just doing their own little kid thing, and they will like maybe incorporate you into their little kid thing.
Mm-hmm.
And by
everyone's playing together, but they're not all playing the same game.
Yeah, and so you're just sort of like interacting with these different groups, trying to convince everyone about the importance of your quest. And most of them don't really care. Even your friends that are your close friends that you meet at the beginning don't particularly care. They're just down for a game. And it felt like really realistic childlike writing to me, where like most of the people that you're interacting with are not particularly engaged in what you're trying to accomplish, or don't understand it, or agree to it and completely forget 3 minutes later as to what they agreed
Yeah.
upon. It's very delightful and very funny.
Yeah, they do a really good job of sort of pulling off the like it's not really the way that kids talk, obviously. Like kids are
Right.
complicated like that, but they are really doing a good job of like doing kid like funny bits. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how else to put that, but
Yeah.
the writing reminded me so much of the Frog Detective games. The sort of like ruthlessly like optimistic, childlike, silly perspectives of things. Very much reminded me of Frog Detective.
What was the game that we the MOBA game with all the kids that we played? I can never remember the name
Oh
of it.
yeah, that arcades, Button City, something like that.
Button City. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that
It
had that
kind of,
similar kind of thing.
yeah, that vibe, and then Attack of the Friday Monsters,
Oh, I did
remember
see
that
that. Yeah,
game?
yeah, I
Yeah,
do. Man, that game was so good. We should do three. Man, it's hard to go back to the 3DS now, but like that was such a
it
good
is.
game. Mhm.
Yeah.
Shane, you still got my 3DS.
I
hope.
do. I'm keeping it safe here for you. I've got a nice one. It's the Zelda one. It's right over here on this shelf.
Okay.
It's cool 3DS.
I like to check in on it every now and then.
Yeah.
Make sure it hasn't gotten sold in a garage sale. I
Well,
want them
not to
back.
change the subject, but what did you guys name your gators?
Good question. I give you 3 guesses.
Did you name your
Pasta.
gator Pasta?
Yes, I named my gator Pasta.
Yeah.
Of course.
I let my son name my gator, and he named the gator Juga.
Juga.
Nice.
I like it.
Well, I let my daughter play this game alongside me, and she chose her first name as the gator's name. So
Aw.
there you go. Yeah, she was the gator. She was the little gator.
I had already named my gator Pasta, and then my daughter also wanted to name the gator her own name, but I had already put in Pasta. So I just, when I was reading her the dialogue, I would just insert her name instead because she can't read. She doesn't know.
So my daughter can read now, and I will say that my progress on this game was slowed tremendously by having my child play alongside me. But if it's not clear by our description of this game and what you're doing, I found this to be an incredibly child-friendly game to play alongside of, or she would even take the Steam Deck, which was massive in her hands. She would play it and she would actually control. It really ground my progression to a halt, but it was a really good game for that. I mean, it's basically like watching a cartoon,
Yeah.
So great game
I think
to play
in
with your
particular
kids.
for kids, it helps that this game has 0 fail states. There's no like,
There's no damage at all.
there's no health, there's no damage of any kind. You can't really get stuck. And you're extremely mobile, but it doesn't really require any precision. This like when you first look at this thing, even though it has this very cute, charming vibe to it, it presents itself as a Zelda like, and that you expect it to have action and challenge, and it has none of that. There are enemies to kill. We mentioned them earlier, but they're all made out of cardboard. In case that wasn't clear, literally they're just cardboard cutouts, and
Yeah.
you are going around smacking them with your sword to shred them into confetti. But they don't move around. In the context of the game, these are things that your friends have set up as part of the game that you're playing to give you something to fight. They're just cardboard cutouts of monsters with very cute childlike illustrations on them to show what kind of monster they are. They're really just there to give you something they're more of a collectible than an enemy. You know what I mean? They're just there to like give you something to hit to collect the confetti.
Or sometimes they are the root of a quest where it'll be like,
yeah,
I
go
need
kill
you
the
to go
5 blue guys.
Yeah, go defeat the monsters that stole my sandwich over in that area of the woods, and you go and kill the 5 cardboard cutouts and get the sandwich and bring it back.
Yeah. Everyone seems to be sort of playing along with the gator like Shane mentioned, some of them like in different ways or to different degrees. Sometimes you have to like convince people to play along with you. They have their own game they want to play. Like I really, really liked the kid who, there's a bunch of kids who have all like they can't decide on what kind of game they want to play. One of them wants to do a cowboy game. One of them wants to do a space game. One of them wants to be a vampire. That one, of course, was a bat. That was very cute. And you have to go to each of them and try to like get them to come back together and come up with a way for them all to play together.
There were some very big Daniel Tiger vibes for me, especially around that part of the game.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it definitely has this sort of like, find a way to play together. Isn't that's a
a song on there? Song, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, we've been parent pilled. Just absolutely brain ruined by Daniel Tiger.
We've avoided that.
You should not avoid Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger is top tier. Yeah,
you can watch it all on the PBS
Fred
Kids
Rogers
app.
Legacy right there.
Yeah, it's great. Honestly, it's so much better than a lot of the crap my kids want to watch, and I consider my kids to have like reasonable tastes for toddlers, but like Daniel Tiger, all child media is a little annoying. But Daniel Tiger at least is like really trying hard to teach like emotional intelligence and resilience. It's the sort of the main thing that it's like leaning on. It's not trying to teach your kid to like multiply or divide. It's trying to teach them how to like get upset and not hit. That's really good.
Bluey is a favorite in our house. Which
I love Bluey. I like Bluey a lot better than my kids like Bluey, which is really frustrating because I want to watch it and they just, if I go into the Disney app, they just want to watch Spidey and his amazing friends, and I never get to steer them towards Bluey.
I like Bluey, but I'm concerned that Bandit is a better father than me, so maybe I shouldn't have it on in the house too much.
Yeah, that's tricky.
I think he sets unrealistic expectations at this point.
Here we are on a real tangent, but this is a fine tangent to be on. I have a thing I feel about that, which is that like yes, you can look at the weird family dynamic that the Bluey, Bandit, Chili, family has,
and to Bingo.
Look at like at Bingo. Yeah, sorry, everyone forgets about Bingo.
Bingo erasure.
And like, yes, like, he's doing like dad stuff better than me in a way. And it can be a weird feeling, but like, you know what? Like those episodes are 7 minutes long. You can play with your kid like that for 7 minutes. I can play with my kid like that for 7 minutes. And that's all it really takes. You don't have to be Bandit dad all the time. You just have to be like really, really in it with your kid for 7 minutes, and that's all it takes. That's my Bluey spiel.
And then you can go clean the garage in peace.
Yeah, be a work from home paleontologist or whatever it is that he does.
Some sort of dog job.
A funny thing about the dog jobs in Bluey. Now we're still talking Bluey.
Yeah, we got it. Sorry to
his
all
job
of our non-parent
his job is
listeners.
digging up bones. What better dog job? And then the mom's job is she does security at a mall. Another great classic dog job. Mm-hmm. Security and bone digging. Love it.
Classic dog jobs. Let's think of some other dog jobs. No, we need to talk about
eating the Bluey tangent for another 45 minutes.
Herding sheep.
We haven't talked
killing rats.
These are dog jobs as well.
Pointing at ducks.
Can we talk about gators
smelling
too,
drugs?
No, we're just gonna keep on with dog jobs. Dogs with jobs, everyone.
Love a dog with a job. All right, Lil Gator Game.
I wanted to talk about its mechanics because we did sort of like, it might sound from the fact that we're saying that there's no challenge, there's no action, there's no damage, and it may sound that there's like no gameplay, that it's just about wandering around and talking to animal friends. But that's not really true. This game has a bunch of little mechanics that are there to make it fun to move around. We already mentioned the climbing mechanic, which it deploys really, really well, and you can get creative with it. You can collect the bracelets to be able to climb farther, but also it's always fun and challenging to climb up to tall places. It has the hang gliding mechanic, which is very similar to Breath of the Wild, where you can jump and then basically jump again midair to deploy a huge t-shirt, which kind of acts like a parachute. Very cute.
I had a beef with the with this particular feature. They should have had different collectible gliders. Just the t-shirt is just kind of goofy. Like, they had collectible swords, they had collectible hats, they had lots of other useful items you could collect. I don't see why they didn't find room in the game for some alternate gliders.
Yeah, I'll also say that it's not collectibles in that like you don't go and find these things out in the world. You collect the confetti and then you exchange the confetti for different designs and stuff. And I had actually had a lot of fun dressing up my gator. I mostly had my gator wearing a little cowboy hat, which was adorbs, and the little fairy princess wand instead of a sword was also a very cute touch. Really liked that. And the other mechanic that we haven't touched on that's a movement mechanic is that you get a shield early on, and later on you can exchange that shield for other things. You'd think that you use it to block, but in fact, there's nothing to block in this game. You use it to basically like a sled to scoot downhill. And you can exchange it for my favorite was that at one point, do you remember, so maybe you guys saw this in the game, so but for the listeners, do you guys remember those things that that were like a square with 4 casters on it and handles, and you would scoot around on them in the gym when you were in elementary school? They have one of those in this game. I
didn't see that. I did get the straight up skateboard, which is sick.
Yeah, I actually think they did change the scooting a little bit. The skateboard, it felt like it had more oomph to its movement, you know? At times it felt like Tony Hawk Pro Skater type of thing. Like you could really shred with the skateboard a little bit. And it was kind of fun to move around that way. It was really neat that they included that. And all this stuff added up to just like, it was fun to like go and see a thing off in the distance and like get there, climb over stuff or use your skateboard and you would constantly find little hidden stuff as you're going. It's just it's really full of little like surprises. Every 10 feet there was some little animal friend to talk to and do some little like, Yakuza for babies quest for them.
Yeah, lots of fun little traversal like puzzles if you wanted to engage with them, or not even necessarily puzzles, but just like action moments. Like there'd be a random button on the ground, and you'd click it or you'd step over it, and all of a sudden there's a downward hill of like 10 flags in front of you, and there's a clock ticking down, and now you need to flip into your skateboard or your pot lid or whatever it is and do this little sledding mini game. And if you execute it properly, you get a bunch of confetti and it's like, yay, it's fun. And then you move on. Or there'll be like a quest that's like climb to the top of this very tall tree. And you can't, but if you climb up to a nearby small tree, get to the top where you can rest, you can then jump from that tree to a slightly bigger tree. And climb to the top of that one, and then climb to the top of the one that you need to climb to the top of to scare a bird. And like little stuff like that is like not necessarily like really challenging, but just enough of a challenge to make it fun. You might fall off the tree a couple times, or you might need to do that pot sled thing twice if you messed it up. But like just little fun mini games that utilize the traversal mechanics.
I think probably the trickiest thing about this game is just finding people in the wilderness. There are a lot of times in this game where you go to one of these little hubs, for example, and you'll talk to like 5 dudes, and they all scatter and go to their own little spots around the area. And sometimes they can be quite tricky to find. And even sometimes there's quests that involve finding something quite small. And given that this game doesn't have a map, and doesn't have any quest markers or anything, it's just sort of expecting you to like explore the space and kind of get a feel for where things might be. The only times that I really got frustrated in this game was like, and even that is probably an overstatement because it was a pretty breezy experience of 4 hours. But the only times where I felt like I might be kind of stuck was like, where did that little pissant penguin go? Like he's wandered off here somewhere and I can't find him, and I found all the other ones. But it turned out that he was like, he went down a hill and I couldn't see the other side of that hill from where I was, and it was hard to find him,
I had that a couple times too. Like, all right, I found your shiny rock on the beach. Now, where the hell were you? You weird little raccoon.
Yeah. That's pretty much the vibe of the game. And this is all exacerbated by the fact that the design of the world in this is incredibly vertical. Like if you imagine a like on your desk, you probably have a cup full of pens and pencils that are all like different lengths sticking straight up out of the cup, different heights. That's the geography that we were working with here. Like between the trees and the super tall peaks and the little teeny tiny valleys in between, like you absolutely have to go to some of those very high places, like Raygan mentioned, the radio tower, the big tree, in order to navigate around. Without a map, like that's the way you get around in this game, is get real high up, and then you'll be able to see things. And if anything's obscured from high up, then it's practically invisible. It's like the secrets of this game are all stuff that's not visible from the top of the radio tower.
The other thing I wanted to talk about this game is that it does have, so we've talked about how it's funny and it's this sort of playful experience. I mentioned about the sister earlier, but this does actually have a kind of a core of like an emotional, thing going on here that I think is quite, you don't see this a lot in games. This feeling of like that sort of melancholy feeling of being a kid and wanting someone to play with you and they can't. And also that sort of like being on the cusp of being too old for play, and sort of seeing the other side of that chasm. Your playmate has moved on. The game has lots of these little like moments where, as you're exploring, this is obviously like this island. You and your big sis played on this island a lot together when she was younger, before she went off to college, and you see a lot of these little like moments. I guess they're just sort of meant to be, moments of your memory where you see little shimmery outlines of yourself and big sis, playing, and you can go up and like look at them and remember something about them. And it is kind of melancholy. It's it's a cute and sweet, but it's also has this core of like childhood's end. And that's something that I don't think we see a lot in games. But it's pretty compelling. I found it a little bit moving, actually. And I won't spoil the ending, but I'll say that like it ties that together quite nicely. Obviously you kind of expect like, oh, we're doing this whole thing to like get big sis to play with us. So you kind of expect the ending to go one way. It's a little more emotionally complicated and towards the end than I was expecting. Not that it's like, going to break your heart or anything, but it's I think it pulls it off, and it does a little more than you might expect based on its sort of light tone.
I'm sure there's plenty of examples, and I can maybe think of a few, but I think it's challenging to make a video game from a kid's perspective for a lot of reasons, right? Like the inherent mechanics of most video games sort of assume a kid won't be in this sort of situation, or shouldn't be in this sort of situation, considering violence is a major part of the majority of video games. Like it's just really hard to tell a kid's story in a video game that isn't just a like straight up and down like narrative game, like a Memoir Blue that we did a while ago. That was kind of from a kid's perspective. But this is a full game. It's got quests and actions and mechanics for movement and whatnot. But it's also a story of kids, and like young kids, probably like 8 or 9 or something like that, So I think it's a challenge for a writing group and for a game developer to tell a story like this and make it still fun too, which I think this game is.
Yeah, this is a very interesting game to play with a 5-year-old, because the Lil Gator, like you said, is probably representing maybe an even older kid than that. And but that said, like a lot of the emotional stuff kind of goes over his. The story is a little bit over his head, although I'm reading it out loud when we play together. But the interesting thing was actually it is designed so well that you can just hand the controller to the kid and they'll often, he'll progress it. And that's he came to me kind of upset the other day because we had unlocked the Nerf gun that shoots the darts, and he really wanted to be able to use it. And he has been doing so well with the controls in this game, but he was just so frustrated that he couldn't aim the Nerf gun properly. And I was like, "Oh no, you are Juga,
Poor
and
baby.
I am Big Sis. And I'm helping you aim this Nerf gun."
Yeah, there's definitely a barrier there. Like any our kids are in the same age range, so like any of the like jumping from tree to tree stuff like that. Even though it's not like crazy, it's still too much for a kid.
Yeah.
I don't know what age range you get that hand dexterity for something like that, but my kid who's a little older than yours struggled with that as well.
I think it's definitely a good game for a kid to watch. As far as play, I think maybe you do need to be a little older, but I think this is a good game for like dads and kids together. So I definitely good in that way. Also, I think this would probably play really well on Switch. I bring that up mainly because I think like if you have a kid who has a Switch in their life, this played like a dream. Like I was expecting it to kind of chug on the Steam Deck. Not that it's like Elden Ring runs fine on the Steam Deck. Like lots of stuff runs fine, but like it's an open world. It's a wide open, large spaces, lots of like big, tall stuff in the distance. But they do a really good job of like doing that sort of like low.
Well, I think it's wild to think that this game would be like intensive on your GPU. Like this is an incredibly pared back experience. There's no enemies that move. Actually, if I have one thing I wish the game had, it's I know we're like leaning in. This game leans into the imagination. I would love for it to justify having some of these cardboard things come to life and attack you. I know that's part of the appeal and all that, but anyway, I think the game runs great on whatever it's going to run on because it's like it's N64 plus.
Yeah.
It's low poly everything.
It looks really good. It does have sort of a low poly aesthetic great. And like flat shaded, no texture. It's that sort of like 3D indie game aesthetic. But it's just really, really well accomplished visually. I think they made all of the animal friends just look really cartoonish and expressive and fun. Mm-hmm. And the landscapes are fun and interesting and guide you and like make you want to go climb things. It's really visually beautiful.
Like a good Zelda game, they have pots in places.
Oh yeah,
so that you will want to go and smash those pots, and treasure chests at the top of climbing accomplishments. So just good little incentives to get you to get to the top of that little spire. And even if it had nothing to do with the game as far as the story goes, you feel like you accomplished something, and you're going to get some confetti. Or that little hopping dude who is hiding in the mountains might be there too, which is fun.
The animals are fantastic to meet. Not just the kids that we've described, but like there are some adults that there's like a slightly chunky cat dad that I absolutely loved. Very funny cat in khakis. I was shocked to meet the kid that is a whale. Like every kid is basically just like kid with animal head, but then you meet one that's like a whale and he looks like a bathtub toy and he's the size of the whole town.
Yeah,
that was very funny. I'm not sure what else there is to say about this one other than that I totally recommend giving it a shot.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of 4-hour open world games, but this one is one that you can absolutely finish in 4 hours, maybe 3.5. It's so cute. But it's also like, it's funny in a way that will like work for kids, but totally also works for adults if you like something, a little lighter or, the little cozier, so to speak. I just really thought this was a lot of fun. So I'm glad we gave it a shot. And I would definitely recommend checking this game out. And it's on Steam and on the Nintendo Switch, and not on any other consoles. If you're playing on something else, sorry, it's on Steam. And let's see. Do we have time for what's making us happy this week?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll go first. I don't often play a lot of games that aren't just for this show, and so I finally have one though that I want to talk about to recommend for you all. We did our 9th anniversary episode recently, and I went on a little spiel about how much I love Drinkbox Studios, the makers of Guacamelee, Sever, things like that. And it reminded me that I've actually not played their most recent game called Nobody Saves the World. Molly and I are always looking for good couch co-op experiences, and part of the reason why we love the Guacamelee game so much. Well, I think 2 years ago they put out a game, maybe it's 2022, called Nobody Saves the World. It is a top-down, like sort of Zelda-like dungeon crawling exploration, beat 'em up, action adventure game that is a ton of fun. It is continue to confirm my love for Drinkbox Studios. It has a really fun mechanic that I think is pretty unique and does a lot of work for making the game continue to be fun, which is that you are able to switch between forms and able to do it very quickly. And it's not like fighting style forms where you're like one blade versus two blades or something like that. It's like full on, I'm switching from a turtle into a horse, into a mage, into a mermaid, into a tiny little egg, or, there's like a ton of them. And each of them have their own move sets. And each of them come with their own quests that you need to accomplish in order to level up those forms and unlock additional move sets and unlock additional forms. And so it gives you this constant little incentive to not only explore the world, defeat the dungeons. The dungeons are very brief, which is nice. See the whole game, complete the quest, but you're also constantly working on improving the different forms that you've unlocked. And basically all of the forms are fun and unique and interesting to play. So it's like most of these types of games, there's going to be some degree of grinding, some degree of repetition, even just traveling across the overworld. Creatures respawn and you find yourself in little fights over and over and over. But because of this mechanic where you pretty much always have a form that you're working on leveling up, even the repetitive overworld fights are worth it and fun and interesting because you can switch between forms and try out different move sets and things like that. On top of it, it's really funny, really weird. It's got a sense of humor that is hard to explain, but it works for me. So if you're looking for a good dungeon crawling action game like this, I highly recommend it. And then if you happen to have someone to play it with, I recommend it even more. It's a ton of fun. You can do couch co-op or you can just do online play.
Nice. I've been really meaning to play that, but because it seems like it's a little long for the show, I kept putting it off. But man, I really love Drinkbox's stuff.
It is too long for for the way we look at games as far as total length goes. I will say that for this type of game, it absolutely respects your time. I already mentioned it, but the dungeons are pretty brief, and like it's very easy to sit down for like an hour with this game and feel like you actually accomplished something and it was worth your time and you progressed in a game like this, which is not very frequent for games that this is sort of the world that this game is sitting in. Now you will need to sit down for that hour multiple times. I think it's probably like let me see what how long the beat says. So it's if you just mainline the main story, it's 15 hours. But I suspect this is probably more like a 20 to 25 hour game because there's a lot of other stuff to do, and it's like worth it to do, or at least we have been trying to do everything that we find because it's a ton of fun. So, it's still not a crazy time sink or anything like that. 15 to 25 hours. Little long for us to do on the show, but absolutely worth your time if you're looking for something like this. It was on Game Pass for a long time. They just took it off.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So yeah, so you have to buy it, but going to a good studio, happy to support the developers.
If folks haven't played it, I can't recommend Severed enough. I think it got missed a lot because really cool game. It originally came out on the Vita, and it seemed at the time like it was going to be totally exclusive to the Vita because it was a game that required, really at the time, it seemed like it totally required both a D-pad and a touchscreen, which was something that pretty much only the Vita offered at that time. But they later ported it to mobile, to phones, and I tried that version as well, and it's also great. They managed to figure out how to work around the lack of a D-pad. And it's also on Switch, which of course has all that stuff. And that version is really excellent. And I think like if you slept on that game, it's like, even if you don't think you're into dungeon crawls, it's a game that'll convert you. It's really good.
Yeah.
And we did an episode on it way back, like 18 or something, be my guess.
It's probably before that, Raygan. But Severed remains one of my favorite iPhone game experiences of all time. It was fantastic on iPhone. I think I like 100%ed it, which is there's a ton of crazy additional challenges and whatnot. And I almost never do that in a video game. And I loved that game so much. So yeah, between that and the Guacamelee games, which I also absolutely love, Drinkbox just crushes it with everything they do.
Yeah. I was waffling about what to recommend. I have an anime that I'm in the middle of that I'm liking, but rather than subject you guys to my opinions there, I will recommend a series of books that I just read the second. There are 3 of them, so I haven't read that one yet, but I can definitely recommend. There's an author named Adrian Tchaikovsky who wrote a series of like sci-fi first contact novels. The first one was called Children of Time, and then the second one was Children of Ruin, and I don't remember the title of the third one, which I haven't read yet. But I wanted to recommend these because I think they're really cool. I just read the second one, which just as good as the first almost. The Children of Time, the premise is it's far future. Humanity has expanded to the stars. We haven't found any aliens to talk to. So we start, uplifting animals, like, terraforming worlds, putting Earth animals there, giving them like viruses that cause like rapid evolution, and like, let's make some aliens to talk to. But then just as this project is getting off the ground, human society completely collapses. And so then thousands and thousands of years later, the finally re-arisen human society that rose out of the crumbled ashes of the old society is meeting for the first time these aliens that were created by ancient humans, basically. So first contact novel with a bit of a twist. The biggest twist in the first one is that they originally planned to terraform and uplift monkeys, so we'd have something like us to talk to. It would be a little different, but not that different. But they accidentally killed all the monkeys, and instead they did it to spiders. So
Classic.
It's a world
Who among us
completely dominated by a species of hyper intelligent spiders, and it just does a really good job. It's like alternates between chapters that are been narrated by the humans and chapters that are narrated by the spiders, and you get this really crazy picture of like what might a spider's brain be like, what would be the experience, just really extrapolating from the physical characteristics of a spider, what might a spider society be like, and it does a really good job of like putting you in the headspace of this very different creature. And the second book, which is what I just finished and really enjoyed as well, basically the exact same plot, but this time it's octopuses, and the also like very, very different from the spiders. And the thing that like he keys into with octopuses is that, as is true for real octopuses,
this guy's got a real thing for the number 8.
I know, right? Just
Yeah.
like with real octopuses, octopuses have their brains essentially distributed around their body. They have like a main brain, but they also have kind of sub brains for each tentacle. And this, extrapolates forward like, okay, well, if you had hyper intelligent octopuses, essentially they have like a main coordinating brain that in his vision of these future octopuses is almost entirely an emotional mind, and then its mechanical minds, the 8 arms, enact the will of the mental mind, but the mental mind doesn't actually understand what the legs are doing. So you have this society of octopuses who are like living entirely in their poetry and art and emotion, but they're building spaceships. They just don't know how they're doing it because their legs do it for them.
Okay.
It's a really weird first contact story, and I thought he has a real knack for like coming up with like weird brains to be in. You know what I mean? So these books are great. I would recommend them. I just finished the second one. This one was Children of Ruin. The first one was Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Well, that sounds
Shane,
pretty fun. I also have a book to bring to Video Game Book Club here. This one I think I'm pretty late on. This book came out in 2020, and I'm already starting to wonder if this thing kind of had its moment. But this is The Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson. And this is a piece of science fiction of kind of the near future climate apocalypse, and really more of a saving the world from climate apocalypse. It's a really unusual book. It's the title. It refers to a kind of a sub-organization of the UN that is founded that or of the sub-organization of the Paris climate agreements. And the kind of leader of this organization and a few other characters, including, where the world is really starting to have that kind of hard landing of climate issues where, millions are killed in super heat waves, and the every coastal city is threatened by sea level rise. And the book kind of just takes a real hard sci-fi, like science and sociological science based approach to like what would it look like to pull the world back from that brink. And in that, it's an extremely optimistic book. It's if you need something that like will reassure you that like climate change isn't going to completely end the human race, this is a good book for that. That's actually kind of what I was looking for when I heard about the book and I read it. It's a little bit wonky in that like there's a lot of chapters that are just like Socratic dialogues about monetary policy, and there's whole chapters that are like from the point of view of an elk or from the point of view of a carbon molecule.
That's really
when it's not doing that. Well, on the one hand, like that can be very interesting on its own, very strange. But the characters themselves are also quite good. I particularly like the character of a guy named Frank, who was present in India during one of these super heat waves and was one of the only survivors from a large area where the temperature rose so high and there was no the power grid fails, and basically everyone in this enormous area roasts to death, and he's like one of vanishingly few survivors of this heat wave. And he kind of becomes a bit of an eco-terrorist, but it's a lot more complex than that. Very interesting characters. The thing that I've got to really recommend the book for, though, is positivity and realism. Like if that's what you're looking for, this is a really fun one.
So we've got positivity and realism, or octopuses building spaceships. that they don't know that they're building. So we've got both ends of the spectrum here.
When I said at the start that this is a little bit, I wonder if maybe the moment has passed on this. Well, first off, like, this picks up right at the time where I guess it was clearly written pre-COVID, but it was also clearly written like in a very I guess crypto optimistic moment as well. There are a lot of policy changes that involve cryptocurrency being a really cool thing.
Oh no.
Not that that's bad. I mean, technologically, it is still an interesting technology, despite all of the issues that it's been having recently. But and this is also very optimistic about that. If the whole thing has one fault, it's just blindingly optimistic. Like every policy result that could happen in a good way happens, but that the thing that I think it leaves you with is I have heard before this phrase, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. And this is a story where solving the end of the world also ends capitalism, and loved it. Fantastic.
I've been looking forward to checking that one out. I've had that on my, I got the audiobook of that, and I've got that sitting ready to listen that I haven't gotten around to yet. So I'm looking forward to checking that one out. Next time I feel like I'm up for hearing about climate change without having a minor panic attack.
A breakdown.
This is exactly what this book is for. Climate optimism.
Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at shortgame.fm. Shortgame.fm. We've got links to all the important stuff there. There's a search box for our show notes. You can find buttons to jump into all of the various different podcast platforms, whether you're wanting to go subscribe there or just get into the right spot to leave us a review. We really appreciate reviews. It's a big deal to us. Thank you very much for those of you who leave them on your podcast platform of choice. You can also find a link to our Patreon there, patreon.com/theshortgame. And thank you, patrons. We have some new patrons. Really appreciate you. Thank you, patrons. Our patrons help us support the show. They help us buy and renew our equipment when it needs replacing. They help us pay for the hosting of the show. But also patrons get access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the show and we talk about the games that we're playing. So if you want to just join us and hang out and talk about short games, that's the best way to do it. Go to patreon.com/theshortgame and support us at even just $1 a month. That'll give you instant automatic access to the Discord. And we'll be waiting to say hi. And let's see, you can also find me on Mastodon at Raygan, Raygan, at bird.rodeo. And of course, the links are on the shortgame.fm page. Nate, where can people find you?
On Mastodon at Nate at bird.rodeo and Twitter at NateSTL.
And Shane, where can people find you?
On Twitter at 8bitshane and on Mastodon at 8bitshane at mstdn.social.
And listeners, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.